Thank you very much, and welcome to Healthy Homes and Buildings, our APPG meeting, particularly looking at the Good Governance Summit. This is our event today. And the question or the statement is time to place healthy housing at the heart of government. Now, many of us, Jim and myself included, will say that it's about time or we should have done this long before now. But it's becoming increasingly evident that we need to do our best to improve homes. The all-party group, we set out, it's an all-party group for healthy homes and buildings, believing that healthy homes and working environments, which are efficient and safe, really help the most vulnerable people in our society. And I know from my constituency, West Cornwall, that actually leaky homes has such an impact on people's opportunities and life chances. So I've been very keen to pursue this agenda, which is why I am the vice chairman of this. And I know Jim's joining us, who's the chairman, and welcome, Jim. I just want to mention a couple of things before we get going. It's great to have so many people. There's a huge number of people joining us this afternoon. Thank you for that. I hope it's informative. What we really want you to do is to, there'll be time for discussion later, so please make the most of that opportunity. Can I thank Beamer, St. Cobain, Velux, Healthy Developments and Airtopia, many of which are actually I'm a customer of, given my background in building, but they actively support this all-party group, and it's great to have their support. COVID-19 has definitely highlighted how important healthy homes and places are to the nation's health, especially those with pre-existing and underlying health conditions. And sadly, so many of these people do live in homes that are not great. Too often, unhealthy housing causes or exacerbates poor health, putting increased pressure on the NHS. We also know that children do better when they're in good quality homes. We know that the social care bill is significant if our homes are not great for often elderly, vulnerable people living in them. So there's a great challenge and there's a great opportunity to get this right. The all-party group put together a Healthy Homes and Buildings white paper, Building Our Future, laying the foundations for healthy homes and buildings. And we made a series of recommendations to government to ensure that new and existing homes we live in are healthy. Now, I'm going to touch a little bit on what we want to achieve today, but I don't want to take too much time. But during the course of the meeting, please use the hashtag healthy housing or at HHBAPPG. The hashtag healthy housing might be better. Use the chat function if you want to put a question, but if you want to direct your question, when you do put a question on the chat function, do include the name of the person you're wanting to ask. If you want to ask a live question, then just raise your hand or again, indicate who you are on the chat function. And please mute, I think you've done it already, but please mute your microphones during the course of the event when you're not speaking. That definitely helps. So before we move to the chairman of this group, just want to quickly run through some of the points about why we're meeting. Healthy homes, and it's just understanding what the barriers are to improving our homes and to making them the places where people want to live in and are healthy to live in, and what the delay is. And we want to look about governance. How do we get that done? And how can we just make sure that the focus is there at the heart of government? And so we'll touch on those later on as we do as we ask questions. Can I move over, then hand over to Jim, who is going to speak a bit about what we're hoping to do, not just now, but through this APPG. Jim.
First of all, can you hear me okay? Right, brilliant. Okay, well, look, Derek, thank you for the introduction. I really appreciate that. I have a question in the chamber, so I'll come back later, okay, if that's all right. So if I disappear off the screen, I haven't disappeared off the world. I'm away doing the questions. So thank you for that, and also for the. This is an excellent meeting. The speakers, the content, the contributions will be superb. So I want to thank the parliamentarians, the local government, academic and business leaders for joining us at this very important session today. And as chair of the Healthy Homes and Buildings, I am proud of the excellent work we do to put the importance of healthy housing on the map. The APPG for Healthy Homes and Buildings white paper, Building Our Future, laying the foundations for healthy homes and buildings, made a series of recommendations that the acting chairs referred to. to government to ensure that new and existing homes we live in are healthy, and how important that is today with all the issues of health being very much in our minds. The session will look at the White Paper's recommendation that calls for greater governance around healthy homes and buildings, and states that government need to establish a cross-departmental committee for health and buildings to champion change, recognise the interaction between homes, buildings, health, education and the economy. A portfolio that goes across many government departments. There is clear consensus from across the sector that greater governance is needed to ensure that health and well-being is considered in all government policies across all departments. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And I have office envy looking behind you over your shoulder. Can I quickly, I should have mentioned it before, but Jim won't mind not having missed this message, but we are recording this session and it will be shared on the website. So before you commit yourself any further, just be aware that you're being recorded. Thank you very much. And thank you, Jim. It's really great to speak to you and to share in this amazing agenda. So I'm handing over now to Jade, who I've lost a bit of paper. But Jade Lewis is Healthy Homes and Buildings APPG, and we'll set out a little bit. She was the individual, Jade, you were the individual behind the white paper and why governance piece is so fundamental. So if you're able to speak just a few moments on that, and then we'll bring in the Minister. Thank you.
Many thanks, Derek. Yes, I was part of a panel that co-wrote the white paper and hence here to talk to you today. It's widely recognised that leadership over the issue of healthy homes and buildings is disjointed within government. Building regulations controlled by the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government. Construction itself cuts across 3 different departments: the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, the Cabinet Office and Treasury. And energy policy connected to buildings is also led within BEIS. However, the benefit for healthier homes and buildings impact upon other areas of government like the Department for Health and Social Care and the Department for Education. Yet these government departments currently don't advocate for healthy buildings and don't view it as their responsibility. The lack of focus on health and wellbeing and lack of ownership in government means that we fail to progress health and wellbeing in the built environment. Up until recently, the government focus has been very much on growth and productivity. It's now fantastic to see that zero carbon is being given equal importance. A focus on carbon can, however, lead to unintended consequences. A more holistic approach is required to ensure that problems such as overheating, poor air quality, mould, moisture don't occur during retrofit, and that we take the opportunity whilst designing new build to also improve the well-being of the occupants. Our white paper stresses the need for effective leadership. One government department should be responsible. So who is responsible? At an all-party parliamentary group for healthy homes and buildings meeting last year, the previous Housing Minister, Kit Malthouse, confirmed that he was responsible for healthy homes. We hope that the new Housing Minister also accepts responsibility and commits to doing more to address the current UK housing stock, some of the worst in Europe, and to progress new build standards to address health and wellbeing. Once we have ownership, a great first step would be to establish a cross-departmental committee to bring together all the government departments involved and champion change. It is also vital that health and wellbeing is placed at the heart of city deals and local growth plans so that governance occurs at a local level. The responsible government department should also be tasked with promoting public awareness of health problems exacerbated by unhealthy homes and buildings, and delivering public education on the built environment and its impact on health. Government funding is required to support independent research and development of healthy homes and buildings. The government should also ensure the competency of installers is improved and enforcement increased via a greater number of environmental health officers and better training of building control officers to drive change. And these are just a few of the recommendations set out in our white paper. It's astonishing to note the effects of poor housing across the NHS is staggering £2.5 billion per year, with the estimated social and economic costs of leaving people in poor housing in the region of £18 billion per year. These statistics demonstrate the need for change. We need to build homes that are healthy for people. The Prime Minister has committed to build back better. Without addressing health and wellbeing, the government would be failing to do so. At a time when most of us are spending almost 100% of our time indoors, there's never been a more important time to improve the indoor built environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really pleased and we're privileged to have the Right Honourable Chris Pincher with us, a friend, but also a colleague in on my side of the house. Chris is the Minister for Housing, Communities and Local Government in that department. And Chris, I'm conscious of your time, but please feel free to take as much as you like, and then we'd like to ask you a few questions if that's okay. Chris.
Yes, of course, Derek. Thanks very much for that introduction. And I too have, looking at Jim's backdrop, I too have room envy. I don't know if that was his sitting room in London, his home in Strangford, or was it a part of the Palace of the House of Commons that we have never visited. It's a real pleasure to join you this afternoon at the Healthy Homes and Buildings APPG. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk about the importance of more sustainable, better designed, environmentally friendly homes and neighbourhoods that we can be proud of. Can I just say, to begin with, how very much I value the work of all party groups. I think that it can be very, very useful vehicles for ideas to be circulated and for policy to be tested. So I always welcome the input of APPGs. I particularly want to recognise not just your work, Derek, but that of Jim, who is a stalwart and doughty campaigner, and the tireless work that he has undertaken for this APPG, for its members and for its mission, I think really is to be commended. As you said yourself, I think we can all agree that the COVID-19 pandemic has brought into really quite sharp focus just how integral homes and communities are to our physical and mental well-being. Jade, in her remarks earlier, touched upon it too. And so the work that you're doing in identifying and tackling poor quality housing and encouraging our collective endeavour to ensure that absolutely everybody in our society has a home that is decent, is safe and is secure is to be, as I say, commended. You mentioned the white paper that you presented earlier this year with clear evidence-based recommendations for government action. We share many of the ambitions that you identify in that white paper and which underpins it. And with much of our work to improve the quality of both social housing and private housing, I think that we can accelerate our pace and certainly respond to the challenges of COVID-19, because there's no shying away from the fact that too many people in poor and cramped accommodation with limited access to parks, to open spaces, to a pleasant environment. For them, the pandemic has been very, very difficult, and evidence, as we know, suggests that overcrowding does increase the transmission of the virus. And that's why at the beginning of the pandemic, we acted to provide a range of guidance to local government, to housing associations and to the private rented sector to support those living in overcrowded conditions and in multi-generational housing. We made regulatory changes. We clarified the minimum room sizes in HMOs through the 2018 a bill which predates the emergency. Through the Fitness for Human Habitation Act, we empowered tenants to take their landlord to court on the grounds that their home is not fit to live in. And in the social housing sector, our national home swap scheme, Home Swap Direct, has made it easier for under-occupying households to swap with overcrowded households. And that is not even mentioning the social housing white paper that Kelly Tolhurst released just a week or so ago, which will give social housing residents a much stronger voice in their housing. But it's not just about the immediate response to the pandemic that we should be concerned about. We know that there's a much wider structural reform needed that's going to facilitate the shift toward building more sustainable, more environmentally friendly and more beautiful homes. When it comes to design quality, we've sought to lead by example. We're working across departments with Homes England to embed clever green thinking into government projects, from garden communities into the healthy new towns programmes. And I think many of your members will know about the Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission, chaired by Nick Boys-Smith, and the work that it has done to promote high quality design and housing, much of which we want to build into our planning reforms. And those reforms are designed to ensure that not only is the planning system speedier, more transparent, but we also build more sustainable, and we build more beautiful homes. The design codes that we will bed into the reforms that we introduce will give local authorities, in conjunction with their local communities, much more control over what is built, what it looks like, what sort of infrastructure also supports it, to make sure that we get the sorts of homes that people want and that people need, and that we get them more quickly. We're also introducing, as you all know, the Future Home Standard. Now, the Future Home Standard will be introduced by the middle of this decade, and it is designed to reduce carbon emissions from new homes by the middle of the decade by at least 75%. Now, not only is that good for our environment, not only does it mean that those homes will be zero carbon ready with no costly retrofit work necessary to keep them carbon neutral, but it also means that they will become much more fuel efficient, which will make them much better propositions to live in if you are historically challenged by fuel poverty. We've also, through BAYS, and we work closely with the business department, introduced £2 billion worth of green home grants, which should be available to something like 600,000 households to retrofit existing properties so that they become much more fuel efficient. And that will be available to the private rented sector too, which will enable them to meet our ambition of all homes at EPC level C by the middle of the 2030s. Additionally, we've provided £60 million extra to the social housing decarbonisation demonstrator, bit of a mouthful, that, to upgrade something like 2,200 poor energy performing social homes. So both in the private rented sector and in the social housing sector, which tends to be better insulated and better performing environmentally. We've provided support to both of those sectors. We're also very conscious, and I'm particularly interested in this area of policy, that as well as building homes which are environmentally fit for the future, they must also be fit for an aging population. It's quite striking that in less than 10 years, by 2030, just under 22% of our population will be aged over 65. So we need to have homes which are environmentally friendly, but which are also age friendly and adaptable. And they need to be built now and in the near future. The number of accessible homes has doubled in the last decade, but we need to go further and faster to make sure we've provided the right number and the right quality of those homes. That's why we've launched a consultation on the accessibility of new homes, considering whether we should make higher accessibility standards mandatory, things like step-free access to all entrance-free, all entrance-level rooms, wider doorways and corridors, and so forth. And I had a long conversation with residents living in Habinteg properties in Leeds about this just a few months ago, and I'm hoping to visit them, amongst others, when we're able to get out and about again. The work that we've already undertaken, such as the Disability Facilities Grant, I think also contributes to this agenda. We've provided something like £3.2 billion to deliver around 285,000 home adaptations. That means new stair lifts, wet rooms and ramps, helping people to live independently at home. I'm also very keen that we work with the step down development sector, that's to say firms like Churchill, like McCarthy and Stone, but others, to grow the retirement sector in its development policies, so that we get more homes available in purpose-built areas of town, close to services, where there are chemists and there are doctors available, where people who are more elderly and possibly more vulnerable have opportunities to interact much more closely. That is good for them economically, it's also good for them socially and in terms of their health. I think it's incumbent on the government to ensure that every department and every agency, as Jade alluded to, is galvanised into action and is working collectively to fulfil the commitments that we have set ourselves. It's a united vision that the government has. I think it's one that we share with your all-party group. So I wish it all success, all power to its elbow. I'm very pleased to join you today. I hope I'll have other such opportunities if you'll have me back. And I'm very happy to answer some of your questions.
Thank you, Minister. That's really helpful. And can I be a bit cheeky as chair and ask you the first question? I'll keep it brief. You listed a quite an impressive raft of things that are being done through government policy to improve people's homes, and that is welcome. And we don't need to dispute or debate the positive impact on people living in good homes. And we talked earlier about children, older people, NHS, etc. Do you think it's a complex issue? We've got probably millions of homes that need some sort of attention. Lots of different efforts from government. I'd be interested to know how that's all mapped, and so you can actually track progress. But also, I wonder what would your ask be of your own government, your own, even maybe the Prime Minister, in terms of what you need to make sure that genuinely is cross-government departmental? Would you agree that there's maybe the time is now for a holistic approach right across government departments to really put this at the heart of government? Would you think we're there or not?
Well, I mean, I think we do pretty well, to be fair. I mean, for example, I deal very closely with Kwasi Kwarteng in Bays on the energy initiatives that they lead upon to make sure that they're baked into housing considerations. I work closely with DEFRA because they've got the Environment Bill going through presently to make sure that there is a biodiversity net gain. So the legislative requirements of that act, because it'll be an act quite soon, are reflected in the planning white paper and the outcomes of that planning white paper to make sure that we've got important environmental considerations baked into our planning reforms as a result of the Environment Act and other things. We do work closely with DHSC, not least because of the COVID emergency, but more broadly on policies which are focused on health. So, for example, one thing I didn't mention was the 10% of the affordable homes programme that's focused on specialist and adaptable living in the 180,000 or so homes that will be built through that 5-year rolling programme from 2021. So I think that we do work collectively together well. but there's always grounds for improvement. So I'm very happy to look at your recommendations and see what we can do to affect that. Therese Coffey, for example, has got a subcommittee that's looking at housing with officials from my department from the DWP and welfare perspective. So yeah, below the radar, below the headline of government departments, there are groups and teams working across government departments to ensure that we deliver joined up policy.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Minister. I'm going to hand over to Jade Lewis now, Sustainable Energy Association. You obviously heard her speak just a few moments ago. She's got a question.
Thank you, and thank you, Minister. I mentioned in my introduction that a previous event in May 2019, the previous Housing Minister, Kit Malthouse, stated that he was responsible for healthy housing and that responsibility lay with himself. Do you agree with your predecessor's views? Do you agree that the responsibility sits with you? And if so, what are you planning to do now to truly deliver healthy homes? We hear there's a lot going on in terms of the planning and other areas, but the piece for me that needs more attention is the performance of the indoor environment and areas like lighting, acoustics, air quality. All these factors need to come into this. And that bit hasn't quite come through yet in some of the government policies. So are you responsible for this, and what are you planning to do to improve health and wellbeing through the indoor built environment going forwards?
Well, Jade, we're responsible for the built environment, so for planning and for the quality of homes. That's why we're responsible for building regulations, for example. So yes, like Kit, I am responsible for that particular focus of work. It doesn't mean to say that we work in a silo. Of course, there are other departments which are intimately involved in supporting our objectives, like the Bays department, like DHSC, and of course the Treasury, because although not all good ideas necessarily start in the Treasury, all good ideas can end in the Treasury if the Treasury doesn't like those ideas. So it's important that we work across government, and particularly with the Treasury, which, although I may be joking and being a little bit flippant, has got a really tough job to do, which is to raise money and manage the national purse as effectively as it can. We have to work with them closely as well. So I'm responsible for the particular topics that you've touched upon, but we work with other departments. How are we trying to achieve it? Well, we've got building regulations, which are constantly under review. We've got the consultation on those mandatory improved living requirements. We have got the Affordable Homes Programme, which is essentially a cash programme which tends to focus on housing associations as a major provider of building, which is designed to build out something like 180,000 new homes. About 50% of those, just a bit over 50% in fact, will be for affordable rent, and a significant number of those will be for social rent, about 32,000 in fact, which is double the number in the present Affordable Homes Programme. So through a number of mechanisms, regulatory and financial, I think we can make sure that the homes which are built in the future, or which are retrofitted in the future, are of the right standard to improve the quality of people's lives living in them.
Thank you. Have you got time? Have you got time to take a question from?
Yeah, if I do two more questions, Derek, is that all right?
Great. Okay, so let's hand over to Keith Ritchie from Beamer. Is he there?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I can hear you now. The question that I would like to ask is, will the Minister include mechanical ventilation with heat recovery as an energy efficient measure? Because this will allow it to qualify for a lower rate of VAT and will provide better indoor air quality for new homes of the future.
Well, Keith, it would probably be inadvisable of me right now to announce to the Treasury a policy that we have agreed upon, which might cost them some money. But what I will do is take a good look at it. What we want to do through the Future Home Standard is to make sure, for example, that we have got much more effective items in our toolkit to make homes more energy efficient and more environmentally friendly. So if I can track with you to go away and have a look at that, if you want to, through the good offices of Derek and Jim, give me some details, and I will agree to go away and look at that for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I, Minister, this is your last question. So I've got one that's been submitted by Jamie Ward of Healthy Developments, and his question to you is: what measures are being put in place to ensure that there are no unintended healthy consequences with the Future Home Standard during 2025? So we've got a thought on that.
Well, we launched a consultation on it earlier this year. We should publish it quite soon, so it would probably be improper of me to say what is in there, but I trust that that issue will be covered off. One thing I would say more broadly about the way the government demonstrates it is alive to concerns and reacts to challenges to policy changes. I draw your attention to one, which is that we introduced PDRs, permitted development rights, to make it more easy to build homes and convert properties into homes about 5 years ago. And in that time, between 2015 and last year, something like 60,000 new homes came onto the market, which otherwise would not have been built. There were some concerns about the quality of some of those homes. So what we've done in reaction to response to that concern, is to now insist that all such homes have adequate light in habitable rooms, natural light. And from 2021, April 2021, such new builds will have to conform to minimum space standards, which were previously just guidelines. So that's an example of how we react and change policy in response to unintended consequences in new policy. So I'm pretty confident that the response to the Future Home Standard consultation will cover off the issues that have been raised.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for coming along. Hopefully you'll be able to come again at some other time, but appreciate what you're doing, and it's a massive task. And I continue to be one of the MPs that wants my homes accelerated and improved first, if that's right.
I don't think I can make that kind of commitment to you. It'd be very, very improper.
Well, thank you very much.
But I'll try and do everything else that you've raised.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Take care then.
Take care, everybody. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
So thank you, everybody. We would have been hearing from NHS England and Public Health England. The people that were to speak have not able to make it this afternoon, but there are people here on the call who are keen to take part in the discussion. We've got a number of parliamentarians here, peers, and from my side of the House, Commons. And it's really up for open discussion now. I don't know if Jade or even Jill, you want to kick off something. We've got a number of questions that are in the chat function there, and it really is the opportunity for people just to talk through some of the ideas and concerns and priorities they have for making sure these homes, both existing and new, are healthy to live in and good to live in.
Yeah, I think what we'll do, Derek, because there's a lot of people, lot of chat going on, and I think if Emily, we can get lined up Derek Cowdery, Paul Everall, and we've got your colleague Graham Morris has also made reference to heat pumps. There's a lot on the Future Home Standard as referenced by the Minister. And another person, Rosemary Coyne. So perhaps if you could line some of those up, and the first one up, we'll get in and we'll start, having a discussion. There's David Cowdery now. So I've had quite a few questions. Over to you, I think, Derek.
Great. Yeah, I'd just like to ask the panel, I mean, it was great hearing from the Minister, especially around the Future Home Standard, which can play a huge role in the development of healthy homes to really help tackle things like fuel poverty. But within the Future Home Standard at the moment, there's no requirement for zero carbon heating options. So under option 1 and 2 of 3.9, it has gas heating. And we believe that if the government is committed to 600,000 heat pumps a year, that the Future Home Standard can play a vital role. And heat pumps can help tackle moisture. They can provide low, cost-effective, cheap heating systems, obviously with retrofitting measures which are going on. And I'd like to ask the panel whether they believe that actually the Future Home Standard should be brought forward to 2023, rather than waiting until the middle of this decade, especially with the climate emergency and COP26.
Shall I kick off there, and then obviously other people come in? I would absolutely agree with that. And in Cornwall, we've seen quite a shift towards heat pumps simply because we're off grid. So enormous number of properties are on oil, or they still are, and many new properties have gone onto the heat pumps. And it's quite a success story because of we can do the ground source as well as the air source. Can I would agree that if it's possible to bring it forward, and it's an amazing, what we all know is that when policy is there, the industry responds and can deliver. And I think sometimes the government seem to not have complete confidence in the industry to adapt that quickly, but we've seen it in lots of examples, and obviously we're seeing it in the car industry, car manufacturing, and we know that the construction can do it. We just need to, as you say, bring the standard forward. So I would say yes, bring it forward. I don't know if anyone else has any comment on that.
Do you want me to step in, Derek, as well?
Yeah, Jade.
Coming from the Sustainable Energy Association, absolutely support decarbonisation of heating as one of the key measures. If we can bring it forward, that would be great. We also, though, need to allow the industry the time to prepare. And industry needs signposting, and it needs support in getting there. The other thing I would say is that, you know, the piece that seems to be missing, as I said earlier, is that holistic approach. Heat pumps work more effectively when coupled together with insulation, and the energy efficiency is also addressed. So we need to bring that together. If you're raising, the energy efficiency, you're going to need to then look at ventilation, because you then need to address your air tightness and look at other issues. So that means the ventilation comes in. And this is where the whole house approach really needs to start to come together. And the industry needs time to prepare for that. It needs that signposting from government and then measures to help them get there. And what we've had over the last few years, and until very recently, is a policy void with nothing coming out. Then we've got probably 5 years worth of policy coming at us now. In the space of 6 months, there's so much coming. So we need a little bit of time to prepare, and we need support there. So the industry's got to start to collaborate, come together to be able to deliver whole house. And then there's other issues like lighting, outdoor space and views, all these other elements that start coming into health. So Future Home Standards is a step in the right direction, and it's great on the decarbonisation. We want to see that happen soon. We also need energy efficiency, and we need to start thinking about thermal comfort and improving health for the occupants that way. But there's the other pieces that need to come in, and I'm not sure they're fully dealt with in the standard the way it seems. So let's hope they start addressing the other areas as well.
Thank you for that. And it's worth pointing out that the APPG can pick up all the kind of loose ends that we'll have as a result of this morning and then this afternoon. And there are a number of MPs who will be happy to raise these issues through parliamentary questions or elsewhere, and parliamentarians. And on that note, can I bring in Paul Everall, please?
Oh, yes, thank you very much. It's good to hear what the Minister had to say, both about the new home standard and about the proposals for access. One of the proudest moments of my time as a senior civil servant was the extension of Part M, dealing with access to new housing. But I think with the work going on the new home standard and on access, and of course the improvements to fire safety following Grenfell, I have a fear that, and this ties in with what Jade was saying, I have a fear that issues like indoor air pollution may well be neglected. And I was hoping to ask the Minister whether whether he had any specific plans to improve the building regulations in relation to indoor air pollution or indoor air quality.
Thank you for that. It may be something that we can take up with Chris. It's certainly an issue that I've been aware of. I got lobbied hard on it from really when I first got elected, and it was something that I wasn't really aware of, I'll be honest, because I was in the construction trade. Graham Morris, I think you may have a question or a comment to make, one of my colleagues in the House of Commons.
I think he might have gone, but he did have a question again on decarbonisation, but it's around, I can find it. Yeah, I think it's just talking about the potential in ground source heat pumps. So it's more of a, where do we go from, improving the indoor quality from, how we heat our homes. So it's more of a comment, really.
Yeah, thank you for that. Is Richard Payne wanting to ask a question?
Yes.
We'll make a point.
If you unmute Richard, then.
Yes, hello. Sorry, I was just reaching for it. So hello, everybody. Sorry about my typing in my question earlier on. It's terrible. I was really just asked after the Minister to kind of respond on when we could expect the next piece of the Future Homes consultation, specifically around FNL, to be released. I know that the Welsh consultation has been published, and just wondered if we had any update from him, but I think he's already left, so I don't know if there's anybody else who can answer that question.
I don't know, and it's Derek, and quite often these things just come out of the blue. But it's something that the APPG can take forward, and we'll I'm not sure, Jill, how we get information back to everybody, but I don't know if there's a way of communicating back to everyone after this meeting.
Yeah, I think there'll be a couple of actions that we'll take forward, really, to pick up on Chris Pincher's, invitation, really, to let's actually think about, how we'd actually push forward on who's who in each department and get that conversation going. But I think there's a whole series of questions here, certainly on the building regs, future home standards, that we should push forward. But I think one of the things we will be doing by written questions, obviously there's minutes, and also potentially a letter back to Chris Pincher, may be quite a good thing to do. So I encourage everybody to put their thoughts in the chat as usual, and there's some great people on the call here.
Yeah, great. Can I
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Before I bring in Mike Leonard, just give you a minute to gather yourself. The Minister obviously set out a whole host of different approaches the government have got and are making. In my constituency, I know that there's eco and the Green Homes Grant, various things going on, but it is very difficult from where I am, and even for the local authority, to actually map what improvements are being made. And I guess the only way it's being measured is through EPCs as and when they're being done. So I don't know if people have a view about whether they believe that the government's approach is joined up, or whether it seems quite reactive and quite piecemeal. I sit on the government benches, but I would suggest the latter. But obviously the Minister did feel that it was quite focused, and it was delivering on what we need to do by for the Paris Agreement and the reaching EPC for rating C. I don't know if people have a view, as I'll bring in some others now, but if there's a view on how you'll be more experienced, you're much more on the cliff edge than I am, and you'll know whether you feel government policy is joined up. I think it's Mike Leonard now.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, obviously we're here to talk about indoor air quality and overheating, which are two subjects very close to my heart. We're currently doing PhD research. We have two PhD researchers at Birmingham City University looking at that very subject, and working in partnership with major house builders, including Barratt, Redrow and Taylor Wimpey. So that's interesting. But I wanted to ask the Minister, but perhaps we can pass the message back about joined up thinking, really, because he's absolutely right. We do have an ageing population. How do we make sure that that aging population, indeed everybody that's got to work from home, to take Jade's point now and everything in the future, can enjoy good indoor air quality, properties that don't overheat because they're perhaps lightweight construction, and importantly, in the light of the Grenfell tragedy and everything else that we're looking into at the moment and the public inquiry, that are built from non-combustible materials that don't burn, because people are going to be living at home. The difficulty of getting out of those homes, whether they're low rise or high rise, is obvious.
Thank you. Does anyone at all want to respond to that? We will certainly feed that in, Mike, and get a response for you from the Minister or from the department. But I don't know if anyone wants to comment straight away. Otherwise, I'm going to bring in Mary Putnam. I'll give everyone a minute to unmute because it takes a little while. Okay, Mary, do you want to ask your question or make your comment?
Hello, Mary. Maybe bring Rosemary, because I know she was there.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Good afternoon and thank you, everybody. Been working very closely with Mike and also with Jade a little tiny bit. SHAT was set up by public funding. We're not for profit to look at the building a sustainable housing offer, make sure all housing is sustainable, new build and existing housing stock. And I've got two things I just wanted to mention, I think. One is we're doing a lot of work now with the Combined Authority in the West Midlands and working very closely with Mike there and many others, multi-stakeholders and cross-sector, on what we can do with our existing housing stock and how we prioritise those most in deepest crisis about their housing. And I think something that's causing a great deal of concern at the moment is the unintended consequences of electrification of heat drive in some of the grant funding available. So where grant is actually relatively low, if you've got a house that's in a very poor condition and there is now a barrier to repairing gas or putting new gas boilers in without being able to do appropriate insulation, that is a massive and looming crisis, I think, for people, and pushing them from what's still a relatively cheap fuel into a much more expensive one if the heat pump solution isn't appropriate. So that's a concern. I think the other thing that's an opportunity, and where hopefully this group and the government can get behind this, is we've done a lot of interviews with the supply chain recently who are very concerned about how they can develop the quality offer and put the quality standards in without a pipeline. And they want a bit more guarantee than a few months or a year if we're going to really create that supply chain offer back in. So there are not enough installers. There are many who are not prepared to engage with Trustmark at the moment. There's obviously a time lag in training up the post-2035 professionals. And it's really, is there any way of giving some more certainty to the supply chain that this capital funding has got some longevity around it? So just to finish, the fuel poverty programme proposition we're working on at the moment, we're saying that's at least 10 years. We think if we can get the pipeline lined up, we can do a lot to almost eliminate fuel poverty in 10 years, but we need that pipeline to be able to build that response.
No, that's a really good point. The Green Homes Grant rollout would suggest exactly why you're making that last step point, because certainly my neck of the woods, there just aren't the people, or because of the COVID and because of the backlog in building, there just aren't the people or the equipment or the materials to do the work that is demanded of the grant in time. I'm going to bring in Rosemary, who I think has been waiting very patiently, but while she's getting ready, the building passport idea is a good one. I wish I had that for my home. I built a barn back in 2002 and made various improvements over the years to make it more efficient, and then I had to have the EPC, but because I didn't have evidence of it, I got a poor EPC rating. So the building passport idea is a great one. I don't know if that's been discussed at length or debated and have been probably considered, but it's something that should be considered, I think, if it hasn't already. Rosemary.
I I think it's
It was just me. Yeah, I'd have to spoken. Thank you very much.
It's Mary. I don't know if Mary's Mary Putnam.
Oh, sorry, was it Rosemary that spoke?
It was, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was thinking you were Mary. So is Mary Putnam gone then?
Don't know.
Okay. So Rosemary, I think we'll have to have it all again. No, it's okay. I can move on. Jim, did you want to come back?
I think he's having trouble with his technology.
Okay. Jade, have you got any pearls of wisdom for us?
I can talk it. So building passport idea, it's nothing new. It's actually, I remember working on this 12 years ago when I first started working in energy efficiency and in advocacy. I really believe in it. It's a way of pulling together all the different improvements and measures you need in a home and then put that into your plan. And particularly in a retrofit, I bought my own bungalow. At that time, I knew nothing about energy efficiency. So I did the usual decorations and everything else, the kitchen, bathroom, without actually looking at the fabric. Later on, you find out what you need to do and it's too late because you've already done all the kind of major improvements. So it's about having a plan of action that puts everything in the right order. Now we're starting to get there with EPC. So they're starting to look at turning that more into a building passport, but that's from the energy side. And actually where we're getting to with health and wellbeing is moving more into construction. We have tools like BIM, that's building information modeling. The tools and the digital technology is all there already, but we're not adopting it into construction at a rate we could do. So I think we're getting to the point now where we need to bring the energy side together with buildings. And that's where government's going on this agenda now. So we're all really waiting for this heat and building strategy that's due to come out. It's been delayed a number of times now, probably into 2 years of delay now, but that's where they're actually starting to bring together decarbonisation of heating, energy efficiency, and bring it together. It's a great step forward, but it won't work if it's just looking at heating and then insulation and not actually looking at how you actually improve your home. So a building passport is a tool that I think we should all be moving towards and needs development. EPCs is going there, but there's a lot more we need to do. And then we do now need to start working with construction and thinking about how do we pull all these individual elements together. And especially if we're thinking about a holistic approach to health and wellbeing, that then, like I say, you're out of just energy efficiency and heating, you're into glazing, you're into acoustics and lighting and all these other things. So a building passport will allow you to do all of that and will give the plan. And then there's the other areas we need to work on. So it is something that has been around a long time. I don't think we've looked at it as an all-party parliamentary group, but I do believe it is a tool that as a sector would help us get in the right direction. But you also need the policy to go alongside it. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but I'm really eagerly awaiting the heat and building strategy from government.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you might have answered Mary's question. She couldn't get her technology to work. You're right to flag a need to join it all together because the heating building agenda presents a real challenge to my constituency. I already referred to the fact it's mostly off-grid, that we rely very heavily on oil. There's a pressure now to switch to electricity, but that actually is pushing up bills in people's homes, although it might be better for the environment. So there's a really important piece of work to do to understand how we can really help some of the poorest areas to improve their homes, but not actually outprice them. Can we have a look as an all-party group at the passport idea? Because that's definitely something that is new to me, and it'd be good to look at whether that is something we should progress. It seems a sensible thing for a building to have that kind of record and that kind of plan. Who are we looking to bring in now? Is there?
Sorry.
Yeah, far away. Far away.
Mr. Chairman, sorry for being away there, but I couldn't get the technology to work. I'm not technically minded, so I'm suddenly miraculously back here. Don't know how it happened, but that's by the way. Just to ask a very quick question to the panel members, Mr. Chairman, in relation to coordination between all of the regional assemblies, for instance, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, just to make sure that all the things that we're looking and we identify through this meeting today, that we can then pursue them. I'm very happy to pursue it with the Northern Ireland Assembly, but just to make sure that we have a continuity of regulation and ideas for all of the assemblies where the ministers have responsibility directly. Again, I'm not quite sure who could answer that, but please, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And Jade seems to be doing the great job of answering questions. But there is a question for you that we all wanted to know, but you disappeared. Are you in a castle in Northern Ireland or here in Parliament?
I don't have a castle, but I'll tell you where I am. I'm in the House of Commons library. It's very impressive. Everyone thinks it's one of the rooms in my house. No, it's not. It's in the House of Commons. So
well,
claim it.
Never move my office into the library. Jade, did you want to respond to Jim's point?
So about the Northern Ireland piece.
The castle. No.
The castle. So you distracted me there. I was just wondering what the EPC of the room is, and think about the challenges of making that particular room energy efficient. I think it's. I'm probably not the best person to answer this one. You could probably help, but I think joining the dots, we need to learn from all different areas. I know in Northern Ireland in particular, they've got some shocking housing stock. They've got some of the worst across the UK. So a lot more needs to be done there. And I think, you know, when you start looking at major renovations of certain properties, it makes more sense when you're starting with a poorer base to look at things holistically, and the cost effectiveness starts to add up then. So we need to start putting in this holistic approach to those buildings. So absolutely, anything you can do there, Jim, to help would be greatly received.
Brilliant.
I think, Mr. Chairman, I think we had Tom Woolley on the screen. I think, yeah, I see him. I think that's him. The Tom Woolley, was he on the screen? Did he make it? No.
He was there, and he did ask a question, but I'm not sure if he's still there. Are you there?
Maybe he's not. If he's not there, what I'll do is, he's one of my constituents, by the way, so I'm quite happy to do a follow-up with him directly, and I'll do that. Okay, thank you. Jade, thanks very much for that. That's very helpful. Okay.
Thanks, Jim. I've got Derek Clements, and I want to bring Richard Payne in, who I think wants to respond. But Derek, are you there, Derek Crum?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I noticed the other day that Scotland has 300 pilot homes in Levenmouth that are going to use hydrogen. And I wondered if the Minister could tell us if there's such a plan to do something similar in England. And the other part, a practical part, is we're going to have to space out more. And I think this has a reflection on the density of housing on the land, and also inside the home, because already our average square meters per person is lower than the mainland of Europe. But now we need to space out more. So are we going to look at that aspect in the new planning regulations and so on?
Thank you for that. I think I saw, thank you. I'm going to respond not with an answer, but I think that Mary again referred to gas being an out-of-date fuel, and she's kind of right about that. But there is some conversation. I've read articles on whether you can use the infrastructure that delivers gas to our homes for hydrogen. So that might be the way that develops in response to your question. But we will have to raise it with the Minister and see what government attitude towards hydrogen is. But there's definitely been some serious conversation about whether gas pipes could deliver hydrogen to people's homes. Richard Payne, did you want to come in then?
Yes, thank you very much. It was a general general point, really. I mean, there's so much fantastic work that's going on, and I think, you know, I'm a passionate employee of the ventilation world, and for a long time, ventilation has kind of taken a second seat to the energy efficiency and the just energy in general. And I think with the higher level of efficiency and insulation going on, the air tightness has improved in homes, which has a detrimental effect on people's health. And I guess it was really a general question around ventilation: is, are we doing enough to ensure that ventilation is got its proper place in when houses are being assessed for retrofit measures? We talk a lot about electric heating going on, heat pumps going in, you know, the most efficient way of delivering that heat. But, you know, there are retrofit heat recovery devices out there. You know, why put all of these measures in and then and then just let it drift out. So what is there more that we can do in the ventilation space around retrofit as good practice to encourage better indoor air quality and increase energy efficiency whilst we're doing it? So,
well, we've got a number of people here who actually are sponsoring this event from the construction trade. I don't know if they would want to comment on that. It's a really valid point. Is there anyone from?
Sorry, Derek, I'm probably one of them as well, so I apologise.
Yeah, but you might. But you may have an answer, and there might be colleagues who are. I can't speak on behalf of the government, but my concern, and I don't want to upset anybody, is that having seen the way eco gets delivered and now the Green Homes grant, some of these initiatives are about ticking. Be careful. Can be about ticking boxes rather than delivering really good, well thought out, appropriate improvements to people's homes. And as an MP, having left the building trade in 2015, as an MP, I've been involved in a number of properties where warm homes grants and other grants have been used to improve properties from people sometimes travelling across the country to do the work. And then local tradesmen have been asked via my office and other organisations put right things, because actually what's been done has made the situation less healthy for them, which is an important point that was touched on earlier with the minister. But does anyone else want to comment on this issue around ventilation?
Yeah, just to come back on that, if I can, Derek, as well. Sorry, I'm taking a lot of the conversation, but the Green Homes grant is a great example of another one of these initiatives, and actually ventilation should be taking a much more fundamental part of that. Actually, to be compliant, you should be fitting ventilation because you have to be compliant to PAS 2030, 2035, and as a consequence of that, you have to look at the ventilation that you're putting in. But I don't want it to be a tick in the box, and I want it to be more front and center. It should be something that people lead on, rather than as an after measure, and hence my question: is there more that we can be doing to get ventilation incorporated in a more fundamental way into these schemes? Yeah,
I'm going to bring Mark over in because he's a constituent of mine, and I can't possibly ignore him. But the funny thing is, when you talk about this subject in Cornwall, there will be one or two people that will say, well, the most healthy place to live in is a caravan. And unfortunately, in Cornwall, housing is very expensive. And there's a remarkable number of people who live in static caravans or have caravans in small corners of the land. And they will claim all sorts of things about never getting the flu, never getting ill, never, ever having health problems. I don't think it's necessarily to do with the healthy home. I just think the house never gets warm enough for anything to breed. But Mark Over, you wanted to come in about the needing for government to enforce local authorities to take this a bit more seriously. Mark, you there?
He's not showing up, but
okay. Well, that's great. I've given him the opportunity. So I think Mike Leonard wants to come back in. Mark, do come in here at some point if you're able to. Mark Leonard.
And Paul Everall has got a point to make as well.
I'm going to go first because Paul's before me. I'll wait. So
yeah, Paul.
Right, well, we'll fight over that then. 2 points really. When I had responsibility for the building regulations in Wales, we always reviewed Part L and Part F together, because I was always concerned there was a great drive to improve energy efficiency. But unless we also change the ventilation requirements at the same time, indoor air quality would suffer. I would like to, I'm not directly involved any longer, but I'd like to think that is still the government's approach. But that was why I asked the question I did of the Minister about what plans they've got to improve air quality. While I'm on, perhaps I could respond to the question which Mark has put in the chat box, since he is on himself, and that's about the role of local authorities. I think the government does try and bring more weight to local planning authorities on environmental issues. And if they don't, if it's not adequate in the local plans, then they can be overturned by the government. No doubt more could be done, But certainly where I live in Dorset, there's a great emphasis now on strengthening the planning documents as far as environmental concerns. I'm on the steering group for a neighbourhood plan where I live, and we spend a lot of time looking at planning applications to see whether they're in line with the environmental requirements. So I'm sure more could be done, but I'm also sure that local planning authorities, particularly in rural areas like mine, and probably yours as well, Derek, do take full attention to environmental concerns.
Yeah, thank you for that. Quickly touching on Mary's point about if an affordable or social house is being built and it's identified that it needs adaptations to it during the course of it being built, why do we have to wait until it's done before those adaptations are made? And that is just, am I allowed to use words like stupidity on this meeting? You would really hope that contractors, builders, the planning department, whoever's necessary, would be able to think out of the box and make sure that that property can be adapted in the process rather than wait till the end and then shift it all around again. Whether that, I mean, the minister did talk about the consideration on making all the entrance level, all the parts of the house accessible to people who have disabilities. That may resolve that one, but I fully accept though that lots of properties will still need wet rooms, etc., etc. But it's a good point that you would hope that could be addressed on the ground and wouldn't need government intervention. If that genuinely needed government intervention, then we've got a problem in the fact that we're just not working together to deliver the right outcome for those whoever might live in that house.
In an ideal world, you wouldn't need building regulations. Everybody would do it right in the first place.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was involved in introducing Part M into the building regulations, first time that there were accessibility requirements in the building regulation. The Daily Mail ran a campaign about the abolition of the Great British Doorstep, and this was the end of the world as they knew it. So these things are more controversial than one would hope.
Yeah, well, this year is the 25th. It's coming to an end now, but it's the 25th anniversary of the Disability Discrimination Act, and I was hoping to do some work on that on this very issue, but obviously COVID completely distracted us all from focusing on these kind of things that could have been an opportunity seized, which we'll have to wait till next year. Mike Leonard, are you wanting to come back in?
Yeah, only to raise the thing about ventilation again, because it's what we're here to talk about. It's air quality and healthy buildings, and whether it's new build, as Paul says, there were 2 renditions of Part L changes to the building regulations without an accompanying Part F, and we've seen the consequences of that, and that's some of the research that we're doing at the moment at Birmingham University. I think that when we get into the retrofit agenda, and before we get into that, we should think about fuel poverty, because that's a massive issue in the West Midlands. There's 300,000 people affected by that. So before we get into that agenda, we must put ventilation centre stage. There's plenty of examples of where we've gone in and with eco-funding and Green Deal, clad over buildings, not ventilated them properly, and the consequences have been indoor air quality problems, mold growth. In fact, we've had to go back to some of those properties and take the stuff off again. That's an appalling waste of money and sadness. So, the problem is that the measures are not funded, and that's what the previous speaker said. That the ventilation is clearly identified as a thing you must fund at the same time as you're doing the other interventions.
Yeah, thank you. On the issue of hydrogen, David Crowdry has dealt with that once and for all, so we don't need to raise that anymore. Keith Ritchie, if you know what I'm talking about, go through the chat. There's plenty of good information and issues there. Keith Ritchie.
Yeah, thank you once again for coming back in. And this point about retrofit, I think, is really, really important, isn't it? Because we've probably got 20 million homes in the UK that were built before 1990, and none of them have got recognised ventilation systems. So I was really keen to know what government would do about retrofitting those properties so that we can get acceptable ventilation. we were very pleased to see that the government video a couple of weeks ago recommending you to open your windows to get rid of COVID. However, I certainly am not opening my windows today with temperatures of -2 degrees outside. And there are other, of course, local issues, security, local pollution, noise, all being a great concern. So it just illustrates the point that that policy, that video is great to see, but it doesn't cover the real issues that people living in built-up areas and with the temperature, they're just not going to open their windows. We need to have better ventilation in all of our properties, not just new build. We need it in renovation, in existing housing stock, so that some of these problems that we've talked about today can be overcome. And it comes back to this holistic approach, which I know Jade has used that word several times, but it's so important that we consider a holistic approach when we do any of these schemes. They're all welcome, but are they actually considering everything in the round? And that's really my question for government. Can they please consider this more than just a one-off event, spending some money? You know, they need a holistic program covering all these types of actions.
Yeah, that's why we're arguing for the cross-government committee on this. It is a massive task. We are talking about buildings that were built a long time ago, and we know so much now, and it's so difficult. I mean, the fact that we're still building a lot of the new houses as we did in the 70s and 80s is just an example of how far we've got to go. Mary's made some really interesting points about the whole issue about ventilation, which I know lots of other people are doing. David, did you want to come back in on the hydrogen?
Yeah, please, if I can. Yeah, one of the key things with hydrogen is there's a lot of talk about the government strategy of hydrogen, but you have to remember they're using blue hydrogen. And 98% of all hydrogen manufactured in the world today comes from coal or gas. So you're still going to have carbon capture and storage, which is not a proven technology at the moment for the industrialization and the scale that's required. The cheapest option is much better to go for a heat pump or an electric technology. So you're using zero carbon options right from the get-go. If you do that, you're not having to invest in underground storage. You know, carbon capture and storage is the equivalent of sweeping your dirt under a rug and forming a bump. And if you look at North Sea storage, you will get leakage from that storage. And they haven't calculated that yet. So I think with hydrogen, I think it's really useful if it comes from green hydrogen only, but is used for those hard to decarbonize sectors like shipping, like heavy transport, heavy industry, aviation. That's where hydrogen has a really vital role for getting to that net zero and low carbon economy. But for heating our homes at the moment, you're looking at a 500 to 600% of extra energy that's required to make the hydrogen. You could heat a huge number of heat pumps instead. So for me, I think with hydrogen, I think it has a role and a place, but it has to be green hydrogen.
No, that's good. Can I just throw in maybe another consideration? So in my neck of the woods, where a lot of people are on LPG, Cala are saying that they can go to bio LPG by 2040. Should we be pushing against government to get rid of gas-fired heating systems, or should we go with government and ignore Cala? This is today.
So I would advocate very strongly that you should actually move to zero carbon options like heat pumps. That, you know, if you're looking at gas technology at the moment within grid systems and even hydrogen within grids, the amount of investment that's required in those fuels is it's generating CO2 at the end of the day. If you're looking at whether it's an air source, ground source, or a water source heat pump, or other technology, whether you're looking at solar PV or solar thermal, you can actually look at these applications of microgeneration and domestic renewables as well within the home to reduce energy consumption. That we should be moving completely away from all fossil fuels. If you look at what Jade was saying earlier about the number of homes that need retrofitting in the UK, we're looking at doing 1 million homes a year just to hit the 2030 target. You know, we have 29 million dwellings. When you look at the maths, we need to be accelerating our industries, the move towards zero carbon. And the only, if we start using carbon technology still, I think, you know, we're on a road to ruin, because we're never going to achieve our targets unless you're using carbon capture and storage or other facilities. We should just be going down that zero carbon route.
No, thanks. It seems from the chat function that hydrogen is not settled, so I misinformed everyone. It's going to run that conversation. Yeah. Can I just, on your point though, David, you talk about 29 million homes. My problem is that I don't think we've properly mapped all the work that has gone on, good or otherwise, with eco and with various other warm homes, etc., etc. So I don't think we actually know. I don't think the government has a clue about the scale of the challenge, because I don't think there's been any consistent joined up approach to improving a home. So we don't know of existing homes where the work's done to actually improve the efficiency, etc. And even with new homes, even with some question marks around building control enforcement, it's not clear always that even new homes are meeting any sort of good standard. I don't know if you would agree with that thought or not.
I would, Derek, 100%. I think you've hit the nail on the head. At the moment, the government, for information and advice for retrofitting, we're actually launching a report on this very issue tomorrow with a number of MPs and Baroness Bennett. And the premise behind this is basically, at the moment, there's poor information and advice. It's inconsistent between countries. There's no assessment of homes, so you don't know what's required. Each home is different. So there's a whole raft of different things. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Derek. A whole assessment needs to be done of homes. You need to take it by community, street by street approach. You need investment in those people on the ground that can have a one-stop shop where you can deliver these services. And it needs to be consistent and updated. At the moment, we just don't have that consistent information. So yeah, 100% straight on, Derek.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, Mark Over, my constituent, has left the building. Are there any other points or conversations or comments that people want to pick up on? It's about 3:20. I certainly have to be gone by past. I don't know if there's other things that still need to be said. Jill or Jade, if you've got anything to add.
No, just to touch on the point, Derek, about what we're seriously lacking is a coherent plan around retrofit. New builds getting closer. We're still eagerly waiting Part L and Part F, which will take us closer. It's going in the right direction. It's getting us nearer to zero carbon. Retrofit, we've had the Green Homes Grant. It's kind of been thrown at us. You can understand why it came at us quickly. They needed to do something post-COVID. We weren't there ready with Trustmark. We weren't there ready with the standards to make sure that the problems didn't occur. So we've hit this snagging point. And it was a quick knee-jerk reaction to COVID and getting people back to work. That's welcomed, and that was there. But what we haven't got is a coherent policy of how we're going to get to zero carbon homes via the current building stock, how we're going to address health and well-being on top of that, and really break it down into the right policies. There's a serious policy void here. There's lots of bits and pieces coming at us, but it's not joined up, certainly not looking at health and well-being. And I think as soon as we get that roadmap to zero carbon in the current built environment and have the policies lined up to deliver that, then the industry can actually start to gear up and deliver the solutions. We've been waiting for so long for this, and there's so much noise at the moment. There's a lot coming at us we've got to deal with next year, and that's going to be tricky. That's tricky for associations like ourselves to deal with that amount of policy. It's even more tricky if you're a business dealing with Brexit after Christmas, dealing with COVID and down to the bone with your staff. So we need that clarity, and we're not getting it. Retrofit is definitely the area where we've got a void and it needs to be filled.
Thank you, Jade. I'm completely right. And it'd be interesting to see how the Committee for Climate Change help with this, because they're quite helpful in challenging government on progress made. And they also have the time to have that forensic look about what is actually being done. But I wanted to bring
their reports out tomorrow morning, Derek.
Yeah, no, that's right. Well, I was kind of was aware of that. I was hinting at that. Anna, I'm going to say SCO then, but it might be different. Anna, you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Derek. And good afternoon, everybody. You're absolutely right, Jade. A retrofit strategy is sorely needed and lacking, and it's something that is being put forward as a recommendation as part of the CLC's, the Construction Leadership Council's RMI work stream, is a request for all of government really to see retrofitting the 28-29 million homes that we've got across the UK as a national infrastructure programme, to see it as a major infrastructure opportunity. But we're a long way from that, and of course CLC just sits within BAYS. And then, so you're absolutely right, and if any of our government colleagues could support or help on anything that helps to connect retrofit, domestic retrofit across government, any help that could be given on that would be very, very welcome. And I sit on the RMI work stream, and I'm also Chief Exec of the National Home Improvement Council.
Well, thank you for that. I'm certainly happy to do whatever's necessary to try and get that moving forward. And but the APPG is here, and we got a great level of support amongst parliamentarians, which is the best route to take. Anyone else that wants to come in?
I think Sean, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Jill. Yeah, it's just a direct question actually to Derek. I mean, off the back of what the Minister said earlier, he actually touched on it when he spoke about the Environment Bill and the work that they were, or cross-work that they were doing with DEFRA. I just wanted to know whether Derek would consider potentially supporting a couple of amendments that are being put forward by Geraint Davies. They're sort of being put forward, and we'll be able to vote for them during the January votes on the Environment Bill. And essentially one of them looks at indoor air quality reporting and ensuring that that's part of the Environment Bill. And the second one is in relation to WHO targets on PM 2.5, as well as legally binding air quality limits, implementing those immediately. And I just wondered whether, firstly, he'd sort of heard about it or seen it, and whether he would consider supporting that.
Thank you for that. Yes, Geraint and I have spoken about this at length. In fact, Jill, we had an event over probably about a year ago, did we? Over lunch, and we talked about this. Do you remember? We were involved in that, where Geraint talked a little bit about what he was trying to achieve.
Yeah.
I'll talk to Geraint again. He sits on the same select committee as I do, EFRA, and we are doing, as a select committee, we're looking at these. The problem is it touches a little bit on the Environment Audit Committee and on MHCLG, so it's a bit tricky. But we have discussed it as a subject for inquiry, and I'll have a look at what he's proposing and whether it's appropriate for the Environment Bill. But let me talk to Geraint this week. I probably can do it this week, if not next. But I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah. So, Derek, I was just going to just cover off what the next steps.
Yeah, please.
I think we've had a good discussion. I think the Minister has opened the door and reaffirmed his leadership, but as we've discussed, that there is a lot going on, and I think the title of the session is putting this at the heart of future policy. And I think what we are going to do as a group is keep that pressure on via parliamentary questions to get the clarity and coherence that everybody needs if you're really going to improve the health and well-being of the nations. The fight is on. I think we are putting in for a backbench Westminster Hall debate next year by Jim. We're in the process of doing that, but I think within the chat there's the opportunity to go back to Chris Pincher to say this is what these are the kind of questions we want answers to. But I think within that, the question has to go to all government departments about what they're doing. I think the big thing around retrofit, which is also a key part of our white paper recommendations. And I think what we need to do in the light of COVID and Brexit is probably update our recommendations and sort of push forward on that. So there's lots of action to promise for 2021, but I think, like everybody on the call, we need to acknowledge that this is pretty urgent stuff, and parliamentary colleagues need to get behind all of those issues, because it just makes the cost benefits are clear. So getting that governance piece and the holistic approach sounds very simple, but it seems to be a lot more hard to deliver. So from the APPG's point of view, we will continue it, continue to get MPs on board, and really, you know, it's been fantastic to have so many, you know, so much, you know, really top-notch discussion on the chat and thought-provoking comments, and you know, and thank you very much, and of course Jim, for a sterling effort on and being in the chair. It's been great to have you.
Good. Thank you, Jill. If David, are you still on the call? David Crowdy? Crowdy? Yeah.
Sorry, yes, I am. Sorry.
Sorry. Thanks for your email. I'll submit those questions. No problem. On your Jill, I think the challenge, part of the challenge we've got is that, and I really don't want to be unfair to the government, but I think they recognise the challenge, they recognise the problem, but to excuse the pun, because of the title of today's session, their heart isn't really in it. It's seen as something that they have to do rather than really want to do. And somehow we've just got to really cut through and help the government to realise that the gains and the benefits to getting this right are so significant. Like all government, I think, or the way that Parliament operates, because the returns are so far in the future in terms of savings to the NHS and social care, etc. It's not always on the top of the Treasury or the Chancellor's agenda. But the way forward is for us, and I don't know how we do it, but we should try, is to get a number 10 policy advisor to sit with a small group of us, for us to just set out exactly what the challenge, what the current situation is and what the opportunities are. Yeah. Because until you get it in number 10, ministers, however great they are, will keep pushing it around and keep doing their bit, and they'll come up with little initiatives that the Treasury will pick up, but it's not really owned by government. And I think that's probably where we are now. And I don't want to depress the end of the meeting, but I think we've got to it's got to be at the heart of government. And I don't think for a minute we're anywhere near there yet.
So I think that is a good point, and we should try to have that conversation with parliamentarians and others to really, you know, shape the policy development. That's what we want to do. So that might be another tranche of our activity next year. So good. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll meet next year. And thank you everyone for taking part. It's been quite thought-provoking and just leaves us with more questions and answers often. Is there anything more to be said before we close down?
No, just thank you very much to Jade, as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
In his absence, Jim and Chris Pincher. Yeah.
We'll have a good Christmas if we don't see you before then, and we'll catch up in the new year. Brilliant.
Thanks for chairing. Fantastic.
Thank you, everybody. No, good to see you. Bye. Take care.